Our healthcare system is in a crisis right now. We are short-staffed, there's burnout going on, there's issues at every level. So how would you describe what is currently happening in our healthcare system? What is going well? What needs to change? And what can we do about it right now?
Great question. And of course, one that everybody is thinking about, and one that I thought of pretty much for my entire career. And I'm going to start with the pre-COVID era, because I think things that we saw in the pre-COVID era have just been exacerbated. So a few observations. One is that we're fortunate that we have a lot of resources and we spend a lot of money on our healthcare system. Although we always feel that certain parts of our system are underfunded. When I work overseas, and when you see the comparisons between what we have and what most 99% of the world has, we should consider ourselves incredibly lucky. I've had the experience of almost being laughed out of the room in some countries when I say that providers feel underfunded. Secondly, I think we've got great people working in our system. I've always maintained some of my time working as a frontline provider and I'm always amazed at the strength and dedication of people at the front line. And even people that are in different leadership or management positions, they take a lot of heat, but I see a lot of people that are trying their very best to make the system better, to make a difference. And then what do we have left? I think we have, straight from the quality improvement textbook, problems at the system level. We've got a great deal of problems with fragmentation, lack of role clarity, poor handoffs and poor integration of our services. We have difficulty setting a really clear vision of where we want to move forward and setting bold, ambitious targets that everybody can buy in. And at the same time, to be very honest, I think we have, particularly in Ontario, problems with a lot of centralized control and bureaucracy with the system, all of which make it really challenging to operate and to get the best out of our system.
Yeah, so as you said, it is a systemic issue. It's far larger than one person can solve. So what do you think we need to do now? How do we start moving the needle? How do we make changes at that larger level? And how do we, as you said, we don't have a clear vision. It's fragmented. So how do we create that?
One, let's start with the vision piece. I spend most of my time now working in low and middle income countries. And amazingly, I see time and time again, leaders setting really bold, charismatic visions. Now, they may fall short big time at some point, but I applaud them for at least aiming high. And a lot of that is, for example, driven by things like the WHO's Millennium Development Goals and Sustainable Development Goals, where, let's be really clear, we want to make a 30 or 40% improvement in some major outcomes, mortality for kids and mothers. I see very little of that kind of thinking. What do we really want to accomplish? Whether it be like making our healthcare system a whole lot more safe, or really driving wait times, or making a major dent in things like chronic diseases and now around COVID management. Let's be clear about what it is that we want to accomplish and get everybody rallied around that goal and excited about that. Would be one key step. Secondly, it takes time to fix a lot of the micro level dysfunctions that happen. And I see the front line. I can't get a patient admitted. I can't get a patient transferred, and everything backs up in the rest of the system. So one thing that happens in one place affects elsewhere. And we may have extra resources in one place, but they're starved of resources elsewhere, and the entire system suffers. It takes, from what I've seen, an enormous amount of time and effort to really dig in, understand where those bottlenecks are. Classic quality improvement. Map out your processes, figure out where the bottlenecks are, negotiate your way with different stakeholders to try to figure out a different way of doing things, sometimes a totally different way of doing things. All of that takes a lot of time, energy, and persistence. And it's been difficult for governments to really invest in that type of work. I think I was really privileged in Saskatchewan when I was CEO of the Health Quality Council there. At that time, the government's commitment to making that type of investment at the time was unprecedented in Canada. But we need to keep at that and not just see one little project as a short project. We need to continually build and improve in our system. In Ontario in particular, we've got so many different healthcare organizations, independent healthcare organizations, hundreds of long-term care operators, well over 100 different hospital corporations and different community service providers. And it's very difficult to manage a system when you have so many different organizations and trying to figure out ways in which they can all work at a common interest. rather than their individual interests takes a lot of time and energy in order to do that.
That's so true, Ben. And I'm curious, would you say at the root of it is a lack of leadership?
Certainly at the top level, it's difficult to set a strong and compelling vision for where you want to move the system. I think in some of my leadership training, we talked, in one of my leadership courses, we talked about setting big, hairy, audacious goals. Don Berwick talks about when he launched the 100,000 Lives campaign, and he set like a big goal for the whole country to rally around. And that can be really energizing, but it can be terrifying for leaders because in our environment, you can get a lot of negative press for falling short of your goal by this much. As you meet it, then nobody really, nobody really giving you credit for taking really big risks. So in that sense, I can understand why there's real leadership hesitancy. But I think if you are a leader today at the top, maybe the way to do it is gather everybody in the system to rally around the goal. So it's not just your goal as a politician, but all the different leaders, and everybody has their particular stake. And so if something goes wrong, then it's a collective responsibility rather than falling on one actor in our system.
And because of our public health system and our tight linkage with the government and the policies, do you think it's time for Canada to rethink healthcare and how healthcare is delivered and the whole public health system and provision of care? Given your experience working with so many other leaders in different countries, what would you say, Ben?
That's an incredibly complex system. I will start by saying what we have as far as publicly funded, universally accessible healthcare with no co-payments and public administration is a real gem. And I would not want to do anything that would jeopardize it. I think we need accountability. We need oversight. We need clear expectations of what organizations should be accomplishing. But perhaps we need to set a different type of tone. And it's important for us to be free to criticize this, but at some point, we also have to have a different kind of dialogue where we recognize the good things and are thankful and appreciate the things that we are, that we don't personalize as attacks all the people or specific individuals that are working in the system. I see that as a very dangerous and worrisome trend that I think, and social media can feed upon that. And we need to have oversight in a way that doesn't create a lot of fear of risks and so many checks and balances in everything that we do that make it impossible or incredibly slow to implement change. Ironically, in my work overseas, I've had the opportunity to work with governments in places where, to put it bluntly, they don't have the same kind of democratic traditions as we do and operate under different levels of autocracy. And I would never, ever want to wish that on our country. Let's be absolutely clear about that. But on the other hand, what it's illustrated to me is that in a system like that, sometimes things move along and progress for the common good in ways that take me by surprise. So I wish there were ways in which we could learn from how to get things, make decisions quickly, efficiently, and listen to people's input without sacrificing our democratic traditions. And that's something that's going to be really key as we see how our democracies are evolving around the world right now.